Hi YSP staff, this is Rhea again, and this video is for week 2 for 3rd grade in the spring. And this week we will be teaching about ecosystems, and the lesson's main activity is a game called Oh Dear. This is definitely a week where you will need to use quiet strategies since the game can get pretty loud, but I also think it's some of the 3rd graders' favorite weeks. Alright, so let's talk about the lesson. So the activity, as I had said before, is the game, and it doesn't require any supplies, which is nice for if you're walking over. So some tips that I have are to draw back on what we learned last week. So we learned about what an organism is last week, and that would be good when you're talking about the definition of an ecosystem, which is a community of interacting organisms in their environment. Another tip I have is to show pictures of different types of ecosystems, and then from there, definitely have them write down you write down on the board the big 3 things that animals need to survive, so food, water, and shelter. That will be really important for the game later. And for the question, you can ask something related to the relationship between the number of resources and the number of deer, and then have them predict what that relationship is in the prediction box. And pictured here are some of the pictures that I had my students draw in the notes section once we were done with the game. So they would draw, so on the left we have like what a deer needs to survive, and on the right we have a deer with resources that's alive, and then deer with no resources that is not alive. So I thought that was pretty nice. Okay, so for the game and the graphing part of it, the instructions can be found in the drive, like more detailed ones. But basically, they are either deer or resources, and they have to decide what there are or what they're looking for using these little hand gestures that you see on the left here. So they put their hand over their head for shelter, their hand over their mouth for water, and their hand over their stomach for food. And yeah, as I said, there's more detailed instructions in the folder, but that is that. And another tip, some people can play it as tag if you are allowed to go outside, or if your teacher wants you to go outside, but you can also do it in the classroom, just emphasize like walking feet and stuff like that. And the game does get pretty loud and competitive, so just be sure to be prepared, like I said before, with your quiet strategies. And as the rounds go on, this is for the graphing part, so be sure to be counting the number of deer and the number of resources. And for the graph, now it really depends on your different classes. So none of my classes had ever graphed before. So what I did is I kind of did an example for them on the board with the data we collected, and we talked more about the trends that we saw rather than how to graph the trend, like how to graph the data. We just talked more about what we saw on the graph. And if your class is more advanced, they can be given like graph paper and work in small groups to do the graph themselves, or come to the board and do it as a class like they did in this picture right here. But I think as long as they're able to understand the overall message, that's the more important part. So yeah, that is my tips for week 4. Oh, sorry, this is week 2. For week 2 for 3rd grade.